Elias was a young man with a kind face, but lately that face was covered in a layer of exhaustion. His eyes, once bright with ambition, were now heavy and tired. He lived in a small, gray apartment on the 4th floor of a crumbling building in a big, noisy city. The walls were thin, and he could always hear the sounds of traffic and neighbors. Every morning, the cold air leaked through the cracks in his window, waking him up before his alarm. Elias was a hard worker. Back in his hometown, he was known for being the first to arrive and the last to leave. But the city was different. The economy was struggling, and businesses were closing. He had lost his job at a local warehouse 3 months ago when the company went bankrupt. Since then, his daily routine was a cycle of searching for work, writing applications, and facing rejection. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late November. The sky was a flat, heavy gray, and a biting wind whipped through the narrow streets, stinging Elias's cheeks. He walked with his shoulders hunched and his hands buried deep in his pockets to stay warm. He was returning from yet another job interview at a supermarket. He already knew the result. The manager had looked at his resume for only 10 seconds before saying, "We need someone with more local experience. We'll call you if something changes." Elias knew that call would never come. As he walked, the weight of his problems felt heavier than the backpack on his shoulders. Inside that bag were 3 envelopes. They were not letters from friends or family. They were bills printed in urgent red ink. "The electricity bill is 2 weeks late," Elias whispered, his breath visible in the cold air. "The water company sent a warning. And the rent is due this Friday." His landlord was not a patient man. If the money wasn't paid by sunset on Friday, Elias would find his few belongings on the sidewalk. To make matters worse, his stomach gave a sharp, painful growl. He was incredibly hungry. He reached into his pocket and felt a single $5 bill. It was his last bit of money for the entire week. He passed a small bakery. The golden light from the window spilled onto the pavement, and the smell of fresh cinnamon bread was almost too much to bear. He stopped for a second, looking at the warm loaves. He imagined the taste of butter and sugar, but he shook his head and kept walking. He needed that $5 for a bus ticket to a job fair the next day. Survival was more important than a moment of pleasure. To save time and avoid the crowded main street, Elias took a shortcut through a quiet side alley. It was a place where the city's trash was collected, and the streetlights were old and flickering. The ground was wet from a light rain that had fallen earlier. Suddenly, Elias saw something that didn't belong among the trash cans and puddles. It was a dark brown object, rectangular and smooth. It lay near a pile of discarded cardboard boxes. He stopped. His heart skipped a beat. He looked around quickly. The alley was completely empty. Only the sound of a distant siren broke the silence. He leaned down and picked up the object. It was a wallet. It wasn't a cheap plastic wallet. It was made of thick, high-quality leather that felt soft and expensive. It was heavy, too. With trembling fingers, Elias pulled the leather tab and opened it. His breath caught in his throat. He felt a sudden rush of heat in his chest. Inside, tucked neatly into a side pocket, was a thick stack of cash. He didn't count it immediately, but the sight of the green bills, $100 bills, made his head spin. There were so many of them. In other compartments, he saw shiny credit cards, a gold-rimmed membership card for a private club, and a driver's license. Elias felt a wave of panic. He quickly shoved the wallet into the inner pocket of his jacket and zipped it up. He started walking faster, then almost running. His heart was beating like a hammer against his ribs. Boom, 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 boom. Every person he passed felt like a police officer watching him. Every shadow felt like someone following him.
He didn't stop until he reached his apartment building. He ran up the stairs, fumbled with his keys, and locked the door behind him. He didn't even take off his wet coat. He sat at his small, scarred wooden table and pulled out the wallet. He began to count money, laying the bills out one by one. 100, 500, 1,000, 2,000. When he finished, he sat back, stunned. There was exactly $3,000 in the wallet. To Elias, this wasn't just money, it was a miracle. It was the answer to every single one of his problems. With this money, he could pay his rent for the next 4 months. He could pay all his bills today. He could buy a week's worth of groceries, a warm winter coat, and even a new pair of shoes to replace his worn-out sneakers. Maybe this is a sign, he thought, his eyes wide. Maybe the world finally decided to help me. This man probably has millions. He won't even miss this. Elias stared at the money for a long time. The stack of bills seemed to glow under the dim light of his single light bulb. Then his eyes moved to the identification card he had set aside. The name on the card was Arthur Henderson. The photo showed an older man with silver-white hair and a small, gentle smile. He had kind wrinkles around his eyes, the kind you see on a grandfather who tells great stories. The address listed on the card was in a neighborhood called Oak Ridge, across the city. It was a place Elias had only seen in magazines, a neighborhood of grand houses, tall trees, and quiet safety. The dilemma began to tear Elias apart. One voice in his mind, sharp and desperate, screamed, "Keep it. Don't be a fool, Elias. Arthur Henderson is clearly rich. Look at his wallet. Look at his address. He has a house with a blue door and a garden. You have a cold room and an empty stomach. If you give this back, you go back to being a ghost. This money is your life." But another voice, the one that sounded like his mother's soft, firm tone, whispered, "It is not yours, Elias. You didn't work for this. Somewhere, this man is looking for his wallet. He might be worried about his cards or his identity. You were raised to be a man of honor, not a thief who hides in the dark." Elias couldn't eat. He couldn't sleep. He lay on his thin mattress, staring at the ceiling as the shadows of cars passed across the walls. He thought about the landlord's angry face. He thought about the darkness if his electricity was cut off. Then he looked at the ID card again. He imagined Mr. Henderson. Maybe the man was sitting at his own table right now, feeling stressed and sad. Maybe that money was for something more than just rich person things. "Is my soul worth $3,000? Elias asked the empty, quiet room. He remembered a story his father told him when he was a boy. His father had found a lost tool in the forest and spent all day finding the owner. When Elias asked why he didn't keep it, his father said, "Honesty is like a quiet coat, son. It doesn't make you look rich to the world, but it keeps you warm in the winter of your soul. A thief is always gold, no matter how many fires he builds." By 3 a.m., the storm inside Elias finally stopped. He reached out and put the money back into the leather wallet, tucking the ID card into its place. He felt a strange, light peace. He was still broke, he was still hungry, and he was still in danger of being evicted, but he no longer felt like a criminal. The next morning, Elias didn't go to the job fair. He spent his last $5 on a bus ticket that would take him to the other side of the city. The journey took over an hour. As the bus moved away from the gray industrial center, the scenery changed. The buildings became smaller and cleaner. The gray concrete was replaced by orange and yellow autumn leaves.
Elias watched through the window, feeling like an outsider in this beautiful world. He felt incredibly nervous. His hands were sweating. What if Mr. Henderson wasn't a kind man? What if he called the police? What if he accused Elias of stealing the money out of his pocket? Elias practiced his words over and over in his head. He finally stepped off the bus in Oak Ridge. The air here smelled like pine trees and wood smoke. He walked down the sidewalk, checking the house numbers. He found number 42. It was a beautiful white house with a bright blue door and a small porch. It looked exactly like a place where a happy family would live. Elias walked up the stone path. His heart was racing again. He took a deep breath and rang the bell. Ding dong. A woman in her late 30s opened the door. She looked tired and her eyes were a bit red, as if she had been crying or hadn't slept. Yes, how can I help you? She asked, her voice cautious. Hello, Elias said, his voice a bit shaky. I am looking for Mr. Arthur Henderson. I found something that belongs to him. The woman's expression changed instantly from caution to hope. Dad, come quickly. Someone is here. An old man walked into the hallway. It was the man from the photo. He looked much older in person, and his shoulders were slumped with worry. When he saw Elias holding the brown leather wallet, his eyes went wide, and he leaned against the doorframe. My wallet, Arthur whispered, his voice cracking. You found it? Yes, sir, Elias said softly. He stepped forward and handed the wallet to the man. I found it yesterday evening on 5th Street in an alleyway. Everything is inside. I haven't touched the cards, and the money is all there. Please check it to be sure. Arthur took the wallet with shaking hands. He didn't even look at the stack of $100 bills. He looked directly into Elias's eyes. He saw the young man's old, thin jacket. He saw the exhaustion in his face.
Please, young man, Arthur said, opening the door wider. Come inside. It's freezing out there. Please, let us thank you. Inside the house, it was even warmer than Elias had imagined. There was a fireplace crackling in the corner, and the air smelled like fresh coffee and old books. Arthur led him to a comfortable leather chair, and his daughter, Sarah, brought him a hot cup of tea and a plate of sandwiches. Elias tried to eat slowly, but he was so hungry that the first sandwich disappeared in seconds. Why did you bring it back, Elias? Arthur asked quietly, sitting across from him. I am an old man, and I have lived a long time. I know there was $3,000 in there. I can see that I can see that things are not easy for you right now. Elias looked down at his tea. I won't lie to you, sir. I need that money very much. I have bills I cannot pay, and I might lose my apartment on Friday. But my father taught me that money can be replaced, but a person's name cannot. I wanted to be able to look at myself in the mirror. Arthur smiled, and this time his whole face lit up. You are a rare soul, Elias. Let me tell you why I was so upset. That money wasn't for a vacation or a new car. My grandson needs a specific medical treatment that isn't covered by our insurance. I am old-fashioned and I don't trust digital banks for everything, so I had withdrawn the cash to pay the clinic this morning. I thought I had lost his chance for recovery. Elias felt a cold shiver run down his spine. He was suddenly terrified of the thought that he had almost kept that money. He felt a deep sense of relief. I want to reward you, Arthur said, reaching for a checkbook on the side table. No, sir, Elias said, standing up quickly. I didn't come here for a reward. Knowing that the money is going to your grandson is enough for me, truly. Arthur paused, his pen over the paper. He looked at Elias with deep respect.
What do you do for work, Elias? I am currently unemployed, sir. I worked in logistics and warehouse management. I'm good with organization and numbers, and I enjoy working with a team. I just need a door to open. Arthur's eyes twinkled. He looked at his daughter, Sarah. Sarah, tell him. Sarah smiled. Elias, I run a large international shipping and logistics firm. We have hundreds of employees, but our biggest problem is finding people we can trust. We can teach anyone how to use our software. We can teach them how to manage a schedule, but we cannot teach someone to be honest. We cannot teach someone to have a heart like yours. Arthur picked up his phone. He dialed a number and talked for a few minutes, never taking his eyes off Elias. Then he hung up. Can you be at the address on this card tomorrow morning at 8 a.m.? Arthur asked. Sarah needs a new assistant floor manager. It's a permanent position. The salary is generous, and it comes with full benefits. And, he added with a wink, there is a signing bonus that will cover your rent for the rest of the year. Elias walked out of the White House with the blue door an hour later. The sun had come out, turning the autumn leaves into gold. He didn't have the $3,000 in his pocket, but he felt like the richest man in the city. He had a bus ticket home and a small card with an office address. He felt light, as if he were walking on air. The cold wind didn't feel biting anymore. It felt like a fresh start. The next morning, Elias arrived at the office 20 minutes early. He had cleaned his shoes and ironed his only good shirt. Sarah was there to meet him. She didn't treat him like a stranger. She treated him like a hero. My father is a very good judge of people, she said. He told me you were the right choice. Welcome to the company, Elias. Elias worked harder than he ever had before. He learned the systems quickly, stayed late to help his colleagues, and treated everyone with the same honesty he had shown Arthur. Within a year, he was promoted to senior manager of operations. He paid off all his bills. He moved into a beautiful, bright apartment with windows that actually closed. He bought a new winter coat, the warmest one he could find. But he never forgot that cold Tuesday in the alleyway. Every year, on the anniversary of that day, he went to visit Arthur and his grandson, who was now healthy and playing football. Sometimes, when Elias walks through the city, he sees something on the ground. Usually, it's just a piece of paper or a leaf. But he always smiles, remembering the leather wallet. He knows now that his father was right. Honesty is indeed the best investment a man can make, because while money can buy a bed, only a clear conscience can buy a good night's sleep. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. It really helps the channel. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.